Hi, my name's Sienna, and today I'm going to be presenting my topic on anatomy and art. So, in this presentation, I'm going to be discussing how art and anatomy go hand in hand and how the use of verism and emotion created major outcomes both artistically and educationally. So, one of the most significant time periods when anatomy played a huge role was the Renaissance period in Italy. During this period, the body became seen as esteemable and useful. And this period was also known as the rebirth period because of new and circulating ideas. And these new circulating ideas allowed artists and others to become curious about the human form, and they then started to study it. Someone who greatly influenced the Italian Renaissance was Leonardo da Vinci. Da Vinci began studying anatomy at an early age. He used textbooks and human dissection alongside of Marcantonio della Torre. Da Vinci is known for using verism, which is also known as realism, in his drawing, and that helped show many of his medical discoveries. His drawings were considered to have been the foundation of modern anatomical illustration. And one of these sketches was called Embryo in the Womb. He used his studies in dissection to sketch what is considered to be the very first in history to correctly depict the human fetus in its proper position within the womb. These sketches were drawn with red and black chalk, and we can see in the image how he drew the fetus all curled up in red, which contrasts with the black womb that is unfolded that the fetus is sitting in. He also drew this much larger than the rest of the notes and little sketches on the paper, so it is what the viewer's eye is most drawn to. With the position of the fetus, we can see that the feet are curled up, and Da Vinci drew this way purposefully because it shows that the feet block the urinary passageway, and this shows his theory that the umbilical cord was then responsible for transporting the fetus's urine outside of the womb. These sketches were found in his private notebook, and they currently reside in the Royal Collection at Windsor Castle in England. Another artist who was important during this time period was Michelangelo. Like Da Vinci, he also studied anatomy, but his only reason for studying anatomy was to better his art. He also took part in dissections, but he did not enjoy them as much as Da Vinci. He was even taught by a man who was taught by Da Vinci himself, so these two artists are actually linked. While Da Vinci mostly used verism in his art for scientific reasons, Michelangelo used verism to create emotion in his art, as demonstrated by many of his pieces. Many examples of Michelangelo's best examples of verism causing emotion in art are religious. This is because people were moved during the Italian Renaissance by pieces that looked more realistic. One example of this is Pieta. This is a sculpture that is very detailed for its time. It shows Mary holding the crucified Jesus. As we look at the image, we can see that Mary's robes are sculpted and they're very textured. Jesus's body also appears completely limp, and it's very realistic the way that he seems lifeless sitting on her lap. Another thing to note about this sculpture is the size of Mary compared to Jesus. Mary is actually massive compared to Jesus, and if she stood up, she would almost be giant compared to Jesus. And this is because she is supporting the full weight of her son's dead body, but it is also a metaphor to the fact that she supports Christ and Christianity as a whole. And another example of an emotion-filled piece that was by Michelangelo is the Creation of Adam, which is a painted piece that is a part of the Sistine Chapel ceiling. And in this painting, we can see the nude Adam and we can see all of his sculpted muscles. We can see how he's kind of sat back and he's just leisurely reaching toward God. And on the opposing side of that, we can see that God is clothed. He is covered in robes that we can see the texture as they flow in the wind. And we can see how he's reaching toward Adam a little bit more insistently, which is done on purpose to show the power that God has. God is also surrounded by who we can assume are angels, but they do not have any wings. They are a bunch of tiny nude figures in the background of him. He also has his arm around one. And you can also see the curves in the muscles of these figures around him as well. And this painting was actually made to interpret a Bible verse in which God created man in his own image. So, knowing the context of that, we can see that when God touches Adam's hand, he is creating mankind. Yet, the way that Michelangelo paints this, he paints their fingers extremely close, but they're not actually touching, which then creates this feeling of suspense, as even though we know that mankind will be created once they touch, we don't know the reaction that it will elicit once they do. So, looking back at the Italian Renaissance time period as a whole, with the rise in the thirst for knowledge came studies of anatomy. And these studies then played major roles on art. These roles helped create emotion and they helped to advance medical studies beyond anything that once was. And here is the image list that I used. And here are my references. Thank you for listening.